it wasn't time wasted. I think everybody's journey here, kind of what I'm getting at, is so different, right? Like you hear of people that get into the business and, within 6 weeks or 3 months, they've already found their first deal and are putting things together. And, I always say my only competition is myself. And, I can be a cheerleader for everybody else and certainly try and still continue to add value, which is another thing I should say.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to Weiss Advice. I am your host, as always, Yonah Weiss. Thank you again for joining us. And we are privileged to be sitting here together with, well, virtually at least, Chelsea Garber, all the way out in Utah. What's a New Yorker doing in Utah? That's what I want to know.
A New Yorker in Utah is a good question. I have no neighbors. I look at the trees. I ski. Life is easy. I get in my car. I drive to the grocery store. Most things that normal people take for granted.
Well, that's great. That's great. I love that. Just living the life you want to live. That's the most important thing. And Utah's a beautiful place. It is. So, good for you for making that move, living it up. But I want to give our listeners a little bit of context. Who's this New Yorker living in Utah that we're talking about today? Chelsea Garber is a real estate investor. She is a syndicator. She's an entrepreneur, but more importantly, she is a designer, right? She actually has a company called Real Estate by Design, ROI by Design. I hope my editors will catch that. And what that does, it's really a company. It's a design company that helps real estate, basically multifamily investors. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about this. And we had a whole session on our Wednesday meetup about this not too long ago. So I should know more about it. But what you do is you help multifamily investors by increasing their ROI by designing efficiently things, in their property, outside their property that may be overlooking. And so by being a 20-year, interior designer, I don't want to age you now, 5 years at least, you've been an interior designer, and how, that's helped you along the way. So maybe let's talk before I keep talking, and this is just going nowhere. So, Chelsea, tell us a little more about that, the ROI by Design.
Yeah. So, well, first and foremost, thanks for having me. It's really an honor to be here with, the one and only Yonah Weiss of all people. And yeah, so it's kind of an interesting story. My professional background and career has always been in interior design, construction, project management, worked in New York City for over a decade and owned design firms, both in the high-end residential space as well as the commercial space. And really that was my life. And it's also the reason why I got into multifamily, because that business burnt me out. And so kind of asking, how does a New Yorker end up in Park City? It's, pounding the pavement in New York City through college and post-college and, working for other design firms while growing my own business. And, really, I guess kind of to take a step back to kind of tell you how I got to ROI by Design. I think it's important to know kind of how I got into real estate, because ROI by Design was the birth of, my passion for multifamily real estate and my professional career in, various forms of residential and commercial design. So the two really go hand in hand for me. So again, to take a step back, as I've mentioned, I have knowledge in real estate. Up until no point did I own any real estate. However, I saw real estate as an avenue to success outside of, I can't even say 9-to-5 job, because I was working a 9-to-5 job and then running my own design firm, and eventually went out, on my own about 6 or 7 years ago. Right. And, I know one of the things you ask is, what's your version of success? And I'll get to that, later. But, for me at the time, being in my 20s, for me, success was making money. And that's all I could think about. And, hustling, and I had goals and I wanted to get there. And I thought, when I got a certain number in my bank account, all my problems were going to go away and life was going to be easier. And in fact, it was quite the opposite. At the peak of my career, I had incredible, clients and projects and, was designing office space in California, New York, working in 10, $20 million homes in New York City and the Hamptons, and like an extreme amount of wealth that these people have. And, I'd always say to myself, what have they done so differently that they've gotten to this point? And, it was either two things. They were either in finance or they were in real estate. And I am terrible with numbers. I'm not a finance person, but the whole real estate thing, I could learn that. And, at the peak of my career, I was burnt out, unhappy, physically didn't feel well just from long days and hours. And like I said, running around New York City, it was just a hard lifestyle. And at that point I said, you know what, I've got to make a change. And I knew I wanted to get into real estate and I just wasn't sure how. But I knew, again, it was going to be probably the only other career that you could get into and make a certain level of money, without having a formal education, right? Like,
exactly.
As you know, most of the wealthiest people in America are wealthy through real estate. So at the time I thought, okay, this is something I can do. And like most other people, I started, this is about 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago with bigger pockets, listened to a bunch of podcasts, devoured books. And I made my first mistake, which was getting into single family house flipping.
We have such a similar story. It's crazy. Like at least from the beginning, and I think a lot of people do. So I can relate. Like I'm smiling listening to this because it's like, wow, this is the exact same things that like I thought and the exact same things that I did. And, but keep going because I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, no, I think it's a common theme amongst people in the multifamily space or that are getting into the multifamily space. So I always like to tell this story. So I, at that point was getting ready to leave New York. One of my dreams was to move to California, live at the beach and just have a real lifestyle change. And I started flipping some houses. And of all places, I picked Birmingham, Alabama. Because you can buy a house for $40,000. My backyard of New York, you couldn't get anything for $400,000. So I picked up a couple houses, and my original plan actually was to, buy and hold, do the BRRRR strategy. However, I quickly realized after I bought the first house and very soon after the second house that I was not able to, I bought them with cash, my own personal capital. I was not able to refinance out of them, being having a newly, I'd say 2-year-old business, my design firm. I, like most people, don't show a lot on taxes and, it's a new business. So in any event, I had the cash, but I couldn't get the refinance out on a $100,000 house, which to me was just the craziest thing. And I was like, well, this makes no sense. So I decided to flip the houses and, make a long story short, it was so much work and I learned so much and I would not have done anything differently because that to me was now the fastest route to get into multifamily. Right. So from there, I moved to California. This is 2018, 2019. And I think, okay, I'm out of my design world. Like that stressed me out. It wasn't worth the money. You can have it all back. I'm getting into real estate. So I went ahead and joined a mentorship program, which I, of course, recommend. There's lots of them out there. I joined Michael Blanc's mentorship program and worked directly with Josh Aitenton, who I know was one of your guests here a couple episodes ago.
Right. Episode 120, and check it out.
Yeah, exactly. Josh is awesome. And, the Michael Blanc platform was really, I had listened to a lot of his podcasts and was really felt that if I'm going to take other people's money and invest in real estate, I needed a formal education. So for me, that was like the college of multifamily, really syndications. So I joined the mentorship program and it's kind of interesting actually how it panned out. This was a little over 2 years ago. And when you join his program, they get you all set up on the platform. They give you a mentor. And as part of the sales pitch, I guess you could say, they kind of tell you, or at least the person who told me basically said, quit everything you're doing, invest all of your time in multifamily. If you get one 100-unit deal done, it will replace your income. And I'm sipping the Kool-Aid thinking like, oh yeah, this is great. Like I'm going to become this multifamily investor like in a couple of months. And it was not the case. What I really learned was that this is not a get rich quick game. This is
Right.
long-term, building teams, partnerships. However, I did identify markets that I wanted to invest in. I got the confidence and education and working with their team, and having that platform was, I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for that. So there was so much value in it. And I also was still a little bit jaded because I thought that I could take down some of these deals by myself, which in hindsight, I maybe could have, or I should say I definitely could have, but 20, 30 units, like that would have been a start. And kind of what happened was, this was now over a year and a half. I graduated from the program. I was kind of bummed, didn't get any deals under my belt. But what I did get was, aside from an education, was I learned really, what it takes to succeed in this business. And for me, that was, building relationships and partnerships. And, I invest in Oklahoma. So I started going to Oklahoma really early on in this process. And this is something I would advise to anybody who's looking to get into multifamily. Get to know these people, the brokers, the property managers, other investors, see what they're doing, and go to the market and spend time there. And I could show that I was serious, but I didn't have any real street cred, right? But showing up, and that gained a lot. And it's really kind of set a foundation for, the property that I do have under contract now. But, I went to that market at least 3 or 4 times and got to know every single person and say, hey, I am a serious buyer. When the time comes and the deal comes, and, I had been putting out offers and LOIs and nothing had clicked, but, it wasn't time wasted. I think everybody's journey here, kind of what I'm getting at, is so different, right? Like you hear of people that get into the business and, within 6 weeks or 3 months, they've already found their first deal and are putting things together. And, I always say my only competition is myself. And, I can be a cheerleader for everybody else and certainly try and still continue to add value, which is another thing I should say. I couldn't necessarily close on deals right away because I didn't have anything, or I couldn't hire the property manager I wanted to use, but I went on to connect to these people with lots of other people in their markets who have done deals with them and, hired them. So, and knowing that, this kind of stuff comes full circle, right? So, really, really where that led me up to now. So, fast forward 2 years, I got my first property under contract 2 weeks ago in Oklahoma City. So
congratulations. That's huge.
Really excited. And what happened too is I started going to events, right? Like Michael Blanc has events, getting online, connecting with people. And I met my now, business partners, Carl York and Tate Seamer from Greenlight Equity here in Salt Lake. And I actually met them at one of Michael Blanc's events, not in the summer of 2019. And we just kept in touch. And Tate and I, I see him on Facebook. I'd be like, what is this guy doing? He's either mountain bike riding. He lives in Salt Lake, by the way, as well, but for the listeners, and mountain bike riding, skiing, doing all the things that I always dreamed of. I'm like, this is the kind of life I want to live. And, I kind of almost stalked him on Facebook, and I'm not a big social media person, or I wasn't at the time. And finally I reached, he was like, come on out, like come hang. So this past summer, I came out to Salt Lake, and I was kind of at this point trying to figure out where I was going to move. I would been living in LA and bi-coastal between New York, and it was just not glamorous. And I came out to Utah and really just clicked. And there was an opportunity for us to collaborate. And also it was an opportunity now for me to move to the mountains, which was a dream of mine. So I am up here in Park City. And, one of the other things I think is so important that I kind of mentioned is just, forming teams, right? Like I said before, this is so not a single person, you can do it all. So, by being able to leverage, Greenlight and Tate and Carl and their expertise and bring what I knew and the relationships that I had built, we went into this partnership knowing that we could go much bigger, right? We'd have more capital, more confidence, no problem, looking or talking about 100+ unit deals. And ultimately we're under contract, as I mentioned, for, my first 51 unit property. Super excited. And I wouldn't have been here up until this point without having gone to the market, forming the teams. And more so than anything is just having the mindset of the patience and persistence that, failure was never an option. I said that since day one. And, there were days when I wanted to give up. You can imagine if you're doing something for 2 years and you're not really seeing a deal come through.
Sure. So I think it all goes back to the, when you joined that mentorship program and that there was someone there saying, you can do this overnight and be an overnight success. And I think a lot of people get that impression. And what I'm glad that you brought up here is something that really needs to be told is that it doesn't happen overnight, right? Real estate is not a get rich quick program. Even with the fix and flips and everything that you learn online, real estate is a wealth building vehicle, and it takes time. And as you said, a lot of energy and the right mindset and the right partners. And there's a lot that goes into it. Quitting your job and putting full time into real estate is not necessarily going to get you, where you want to go. But again, I think having that exposure to the possibilities definitely helps you, right? Get where you are now. Well, I want to just ask you a question about something you said earlier, also in terms of the mindset, right? When you decided that this is something you want to do, and it doesn't matter what's going to get in the way, right? And before we even circle back to ROI by Design and how that developed through this journey, I think that's incredible also, because real estate is not necessarily an end all be all. It's a place that you can take wealth and you can put it and make money, but it's not necessarily just that's the only way to go. But so my question about mindset is, what's your best advice for someone who's just, they're thinking of doing something. They want to get involved. They heard about multifamily. They heard about real estate. Even if it's something else, they want to do something. What are those things that you do practically to make sure that you stay in that right mindset?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a lot of answers for all of those questions. But, a famous quote, one of Buddha's, is what you think you become, right? And having intention with your thoughts, and it's easy to get caught up in negative thoughts, but that puts out a negative energy and a negative force, and it doesn't attract back, positivity. So even on the deepest of darkest days, there's, you have to have positivity. And for me, it's like really practice gratitude, because when you're in a state of gratitude, and love, and there is no negativity. And it's been a journey. My life wasn't always like that. It's the mental getting, it's also not just mental, it's physical. Like I go to the gym, having my body and my mind be top performing at, all times is so important. So aside from just the food that I put in my body, it's getting enough sleep. I wake up every day at 5:00 in the morning. My morning routine is I meditate the first 15 to 20 minutes. I get into a state of meditation, and it's I've actually learned this. I have a coach, and we do both a lot of business and personal work. And this is something I've been working on incorporating into my routine. And when you're in a state of meditation, and it's a four part of, just breathing, part one. Part two is be thankful, show gratitude, have conversations with people in your life. Part three is visualization. I often think of, what is it going to look like to own 500, 1,000, 1,500 doors, or I'm at the equestrian center riding my horse, practicing, jumping, really getting in the mode. And then part four is, again, going back to just the breathing exercise and stillness. And when you're in that state, you've elevated your mind, right? And that frequency carries throughout the day. It's something you have to practice, and it's taken me some time to get into it. And like I said, I journal every day. I write down in the morning 10 things I'm grateful for that I have right now, and 10 things I'm grateful for that I don't have. And so just by doing those little exercises kind of sets the day up for success. And, of course, as I've mentioned, exercise, I think that's equally as important, not just your mind, but your body. But yeah, I mean, going from the W-2 job into, owning my own design firms, into real estate, there was no linear path. Yeah. When I left my W-2 job, I was in probably like one of the lowest points of my life. I had dated somebody that essentially stole all of my money. I was like in the red zone. Wow. I had to call up my parents in my mid late 20s and ask them for money. And that was like, to me, like the most shameful thing I could have ever done in my life. And my dad said to me, he's like, if you don't have the he's, typical New York business guy. Like, if you don't have the finances, like to start your own business, like you can't, it's not going to work. Don't do it. And I said, I don't believe that. I said, I believe so much in myself and what I'm doing that I have to take this leap. And if I had never take that leap, I probably would have still, been back working for somebody that it was just miserable. And the same thing went for real estate. But, to your point, back to this is a vehicle for wealth.
Yeah.
I have other businesses, right? So real estate is not for me, it is my end all be all game. Like, I have multiple streams of income. So I have my design firm. I have both a residential design firm. I have ROI ByDesign, which we'll talk about as my commercial design firm. I have a family business where I import textiles from India. So I am like doing multiple things. Real estate is, it's been a transition over the last 2 years. My greatest desires are to really be focused on it more full time, which is where I am now. But again, that took 2 years, and we all have bills to pay, right?
Right.
And as you know, real estate, you'll get some cash flow here, and most of it goes to the investors, and some acquisition fees. But until you really get momentum going, like, it takes time. So I would advise not quitting your job, although I've heard of some people who have and go full force into it. But, I think that's just going to be a chance of luck. I'm not sure. That wasn't my case, but it was just, again, Hal Elrod has a great book. He, Miracle Morning Millionaires is a great one that I love, and The Miracle Equation. And the miracle equation is basically unwavering faith and, persistence and possibilities, and knowing that you cannot fail. Because if you put that in your mind, you literally cannot fail.
It's so true.
And it's unwavering faith and extraordinary efforts equal miracles. And they happen every day in the craziest ways. And I really believe in that. And that's sort of what I've lived by. But it's, again, it's all in your mind.
It is. And do you see yourself going more full-time into real estate, as you mentioned, a few years down the road?
Yeah. So our ROI ByDesign, which is my multifamily design firm, was the birth of COVID, the ultimate pivot point, or whatever you want to call it. The deal flow was low. I was unhappy with, again, back in the residential space doing design. And it was a really interesting, I drove cross country from Los Angeles to New York with my best friend, and we stopped in Sedona, Arizona, which is one of my favorite places. It's just so spiritual. And I met with a shaman there and did an astrological reading, which is super cool if you've never done one before. And basically they pull up the date and time and place that you're born, and they pull up where the stars and planets are aligned. And he knew nothing about me. And one of the key things that stuck out from that experience was he said I was going to have a rebirth of my business. And I kept thinking, like, rebirth, like, I want to get out of this design world. I've been trying to get into real estate, and the rebirth, I'm driving cross country now, was actually an idea I had come up with over a year ago, but never did anything with, was ROI ByDesign, which was how can I help other multifamily investors increase the return on their assets through cost-effective design and remodeling solutions. I had seen enough properties, as I'm sure you have, that people spend a ton of money on CapEx or interior, exterior, and the end result is just not in line with what they've spent. So I said, this is an opportunity to connect with more people that are not only doing what I aspire to be doing or what I'm working on, but, to help them with their properties. So ROI ByDesign was born and just took off. So we're working within all asset classes. Our sweet spot is C, B class, but we're doing new development as well. And we essentially act as a consultant. We help pick out materials from all the places that you're shopping at already and streamline the process. So everything from exterior branding and signage to paint colors to full-on interior remodels, common spaces, amenities, game courts, you name it. Like, we come up with ideas within, your scope of work and your budget. And it's really been so exciting because it's so in line with what my passions are, and being able to help other people has just opened up so many doors to getting to now work so closely again with really successful people. And, there's a couple people who really believed in me and the idea. And, and that's all it took. You don't need everybody to be in your corner.
Right.
You get like a couple good people who support you, and, whether you do work for less money or for free, like I knew this business would be a huge success. And, I also owed a lot to, was never really big on social media. So, I probably connected with you, Yona, back during the pandemic when I was like, I got to be connecting with people. And, if I'm going to grow this new business, which happened soon after, I grew a $100,000 plus business on LinkedIn. I reached out to people on LinkedIn, I have a virtual assistant, and said, hey, like, this is what we can offer you. How can we collaborate? Right. Mm-hmm. We want to bring value to you and to the community and to your investors. And it's been a beautiful thing. And
that's amazing.
Love what we're doing. And we're expanding rapidly. And so hiring somebody, bringing somebody onto my team to help with the design work and, not getting too caught up, of course, working in the business, but working on the business. And, that has allowed me now more free time to be underwriting deals, out and looking at properties, talking with brokers. So I think from this point on, just the level of scalability is like, I'm just so confident. I know that how things are going to take off. And it's because every single day for 2 years, I did something in the space.
Wow. If nothing else, we have an incredible lesson on persistence and, going after it, getting what you want. But that's truly amazing, that rebirth of your business in a way that has not only, helped, dozens of others in the space, but also yourself, because it's really given you the freedom to do, focus on what you really love and what you enjoy and be able to relocate to a place that you want to live in. And, ROI by design, it's really, life, life by design. That's really what it's about, right? That's the infinite ROI.
Yeah, I'm definitely designing my best possible life and, being able to work virtually. And for the first time, our business model is virtual for the most part. So we're working with people all over the country, and I'm no longer stuck to helping people in New York or just in LA, because our presence is now everywhere, which is so fun.
Yeah.
And we're fortunate enough that we do get to visit some of these properties and, meet the owners face to face. And there's nothing more valuable than that. And getting to go see these properties, places that have been really near condemned, like terrible, terrible living situations, and know that you've helped be a part of this is so awesome. It's really rewarding. And, it fills me up. It fills my tank. I'm happy about it, what I'm doing.
Well, good for you. That's awesome. Chelsea, I want to transition now and jump right into the final four, which is 4 questions I ask all my guests, and you probably know what they are. The first question I'm going to ask you is, what is the worst job that you've ever had?
I think worst job was probably correlates to a worse boss. I worked for an architectural design, like they call it an AD 100 top designers. It's in every Architectural Digest magazine. I had a stint for about 6 months, 6 years would have been terrible, 6 months. And she was just downright not a nice person. And the projects were a mess. And you just, what's behind closed doors, like you just don't know somebody or a business until you really know them or work for them. And things can look great on the outside, but just, every day I wanted to cry going to work. So it was terrible, but it was a stepping stone to the next opportunity.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry for bringing that back up. I'm sure it was, does not sound like a good situation. And oftentimes, the worst jobs really have a lot to do with the people, and that reflects a lot on who we are, because, that's surrounding yourself with the right people is really the key to success. So thanks for sharing that bad memory. Now that I think about it, why do I ask this question? No, that's good. It's good. Second question for you. What is a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
Oh, that's an easy one for me. Unbroken is one of my absolute favorite movies by Laura Hilbrand. It also, I think, became a movie, and just an incredible story again on persistence and patience, and, a World War II, basically hero flying an airplane, crashes in the middle of the ocean and is in a, basically a dinghy, waiting for survival in the middle of nowhere. And, just again, goes back to the mindset. And that book set my mind up for some really, really challenging things that happened in my life. And I can equate getting through that and being in the right mindset back to that book. It was super powerful for me.
Wow. Awesome. Okay. We're going to put that in the show notes, Unbroken. Definitely check that out and put it on our reading list. Thank you. Third question for you is going to be, what's a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
I don't know if it's necessarily a talent, but I'm really focused right now on growing my social media presence. I've pretty much been a pretty private person, but I realize in this business, it's, sharing value and spreading the word and opportunities and, helping others. And so, yeah, getting out there a bit more. It's been a big takeaway. I was just at Tim Brotz's mastermind in Austin last week or the week before. And, it's just, what's going on in social media is, the consensus was, if you're not doing it, you're not growing your business, as you know.
Yeah,
and it's been such a powerful tool, like connecting with you amongst thousands of other people. Like it's been invaluable. But for me, it's not something that comes easy, right? So
yeah, I can relate to that. I definitely can. It was not something that came easy to me either a few years ago, and I'm not really that so good at it. I mean, but apart from LinkedIn, other things, it's challenging. But I think with who you are, and especially with your business and the combining the multifamily with the design, with everything like that, like I would think Instagram would be like a great place for you to kind of grow that. That's just my opinion. Having to with the images and pictures and like that, and you're shaking your head.
No. Where it's like all platforms. I mean, there's always the great debate is, people are like, oh, TikTok's the best thing, or Facebook. I'm like, I thought 12-year-olds make videos on TikTok.
It's incredible. There's a guy who I want to bring on this podcast. I've invited him a couple of times. He's got like 30-some thousand, 40,000 followers on Instagram. And I check Instagram maybe like once a day or something like that. But he's always the one that I check. He's got these incredible videos, and it's all about real estate. Really smart guy. And he does these, they're TikTok videos that he posts to Instagram. I guess that you can do, I don't know how TikTok works. Is it Ryan Pineda? No, Ryan Pineda. He's good too. But this guy's name is Elliot Alkuri. He's Ace, Invest with Ace, his name. Anyways, he has like 1 million followers or something, like 500,000 on TikTok. But it's incredible. Like he's running this multifamily business, and it's wholesale business and fix and flips and investment properties. And he's just sharing this incredible information, and he's doing it all from, he's growing this business through TikTok and Instagram. It's just incredible.
Yeah. I think, one of the takeaways too from this event, Tucker Max, the author of I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell, he was at the event. And one of the things he said is like, everybody has a story to tell. And if you can just get a couple people to relate or to help them in some way, you've added value. So rather than looking at it, if I can help one person or if I can help 1,000 people, I've done something good. And, somebody can learn from my mistakes or whatnot, then I think that's a win.
Yeah, very cool. And so that's a great segue to our fourth and final question, which is, what does success mean to you?
Success to me is, of course, I have goals that are, financially related, but a lot of the success I think is, being fulfilled in your personal relationships, your business, your family, the activities, like the things that you love to do. And for me, that's creating a really meaningful life and having time, right? Because if we don't have time, we can't have a lot of things. So yeah, to me, I'm one of the things I work on, we talk to my coach. He's like, if you're not happy with where you are now, even if you have all of those things like way out there, it's not going to feel any different. So you also have to just, appreciate what you have. Right. And that you can't let things control you. We don't need anything. We want things, but we need very little when it comes down to it as people.
Yeah. And that's a great distinction. I think a lot of people, and it's all about, labeling things the right way. Like, do you need something? Do you want something? Can you? These kind of things, and just kind of labeling things like that. I need to do so. No, you don't need to. I want to, right? And so it's really changing your wants, changing your desires, or your, to match what you believe is the right thing to do, right? So that, or what feels good, or what you view as success. And I love that you said that we don't need these things, and I think that's such a powerful principle. When you are grateful for what you have, you can be the happiest person in the world with very little. And I know personally, I know some people that they live literally in like one room, tiny apartments with a family, and 10 kids in one room. It's crazy if you think about it, but there are people like that, and they're the happiest people I've ever met. And it just goes to show it's not physical things, not possessions that bring you happiness or true wealth or success. So I'm glad we're on the same wavelength on that, Chelsea. But last but not least, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you? Maybe on social media by the time this airs, but
I think the easiest place is probably LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there. Just Chelsea, Chelsea Garber, Garber. You could, if you can find me on LinkedIn, you can find me pretty much anywhere else. Shoot me a message, friend request. I just like talking with people, and, let's chat and see how we can help each other. That's what it's all about.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for joining us for this time. It's been a pleasure. It's love to, hear a lot more about your backstory.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Yona, for everything you do. And for all the listeners out there, it's an incredible podcast. Love being here with you.
Thank you. And you gave me such an awesome review. I mean, probably like one of the best reviews I ever got. Seriously.
5 stars. So one of my inside jokes, Kate and I think I wrote it on my bio is, I'm living a 5-star life. And what does that mean to you? Right? To me, that's living in Park City. That's, skiing on a powder day, awesome. Traveling, spending time with family and friends, and you have a 5-star podcast. Every bit of that.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that very much. And to our listeners, thank you again for joining us and listening in. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.